Me too.
Let's shape up here.
Thank you. Mhm.
So Commissioner, I'm gonna go off screen, but if you need help with the slides, let me know and I will take any notes that are needed as well.
Melissa, can I start just to let attendees in?
Yeah.
And then you don't have to necessarily start the meeting, but just so.
Yeah, I can.
Are we good to go, Melissa?
Almost.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
And in advance, just if I lose you guys, I'm not in the country and there's a really bad storm. So I might lose internet service and go back and forth, but Melissa, our vice chair, she's in person in the office. So don't be alarmed if you lose my face or voice or something from time to time. I apologize for that.
I hope you're someplace fun. Are you?
Yeah, yes and no.
Okay.
Okay, you're all set to whenever you want to. It's all,
Great.
it's all live.
All right, we'll go ahead and start. Good evening. This is the City Services and Quality of Life Committee of Manhattan Community Board 5. My name is Tiffany Revis. I'm chair of the board, and we have two agendas on the meeting tonight. First, we'll be having a presentation from the Commissioner of the New York State Office of Mental Health on the governor's mental health initiatives and proposal. And then we'll be having a
You
committee
can come in here. I'm not our camera.
You guys good?
Vanessa, really quick, you're just unmuted.
Oh, I can mute her. Okay. And then second on the agenda, we're going to have a committee discussion about the potential action that we discussed last about the Treatment Court Expansion Act. So if we could take attendance and then we'll go right to our first item on the agenda. So again, I'm Tiffany Revis.
Melissa Stewart.
Lev Kimyagorov.
Yaron Nodi Victor. Tristan Haas.
Will Rothschild.
Michael Payback.
David Shapiro.
Robert Pagan.
I'm Michael Greeley.
Kevin Thompson.
All right, I think we got everyone. So I don't want to take up too much more time because we have some fabulous people joining us tonight. So first we're joined by Dr. Sullivan, the Commissioner of the New York State Office of Mental Health. Her and her team are here to talk to us tonight about the governor's initiatives and budget proposal and hopefully answer a bunch of questions that I hope that we have for her tonight. So with that, go ahead and let us know your presentation. If you want to introduce who's on the calls tonight, go ahead and do that now, please. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. And first of all, thank you so much for having me and having this opportunity to present the governor's budget. So I'm Ann Sullivan. I'm the commissioner for the New York State Office of Mental Health. I'm a psychiatrist. The other person on is Patty Bowes. Patty, just want to say hello while I try to get the slides to work.
Sure, I'll use a little time for you to get those slides up. Hi all, my name is Patty Bowes. I'm the Director of Intergovernmental Relations for the Office of Mental Health. Very happy to be here supporting the Commissioner tonight.
Okay, so this is the slideshow. So I'll go through this relatively quickly, I think, and then we can have questions. But so I'm going to present first the governor's overall budget and then some specific things that have been happening in mental health. Just to begin, I think that the governor.
Commissioner, really quick, I think Patty, go ahead.
The slides are not up.
Oh, they're not up?
No.
Oh, that's weird. Okay. Let me something.
Share screen.
Yeah, I had tried that. Maybe it didn't let me get back again. I can't get this off. Sorry, guys. I can't,
Should be a green button at the
okay,
bottom.
let me do this. Let me try one more time. Let me start again. Share. Um. ugh. Maybe Patty, maybe you should put them up. I'm sorry. Sorry, guys. Okay.
Mm, yeah.
We're good.
Okay, so just to begin, everybody can see them now?
Yep.
Okay?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Okay. So basically, I'm gonna begin by just talking about the governor's overall budget and then go into some of the specifics about mental health. But first of all, next slide, Patty. Just to talk about the four big areas that, can you go to the next one? Patty? Did I lose you?
No, I'm on the next slide. So let me see.
I don't see it though. Only see the first one.
Okay.
But that's it. Okay,
Okay.
can you move those now? Okay.
Yeah.
There's four major areas that I'm gonna be talking about. One is keeping New Yorkers safe, which I think is something that we're all interested in, and it's very important. Making it affordable, making sure that we deliver for parents and youth. And this is a major initiative of the governor. And, it's been great to work with her on this from the mental health perspective. And, I've never had the experience of working with a governor who is so concerned about family and kids and mental health. So it's really fantastic. And then also just the fiscal responsibility, which we're all responsible for in the government, to make sure that basically New York stays fiscally healthy as well. So the next slide is just to say what the governor always says, which is that our future depends on the ability of every family to afford the essentials of life, protect safety and security of our residents. And, it's very nice as a mental health person to present this budget, because I really see it as almost a social determinants budget. As I talk about these things, you're going to see so much that is here to really help families and really contributes to mental wellness, in addition to some of the specific things we do for mental health. So the next slide. The next slide is just really on the fiscal viability of the state, which right now is in pretty good shape. We still have a $14.5 billion in reserves on top of what's being spent in the budget, which is really impressive. And this governor has put those dollars in reserves over the past 4.5 years. The total budget is about 260 billion. A big hit is the federal funding, which has decreased. That's about $10 billion. And about half, a little more than half of that was what the ARPA funding, the kind of funding that came from the federal government as a result of COVID. And after COVID, we knew some of that funding was going to go away. But there's about $3 billion in there that we weren't expecting to lose. And that $3 billion is attached to Medicaid. And that includes some of the loss of some of the federal match for the essential plan, which we had. And we're expecting that decrease in dollars to fund Medicaid to increase next year if what is being proposed goes through, which I think you're aware of, the Medicaid upping of Medicaid, that you have to reapply every 6 months. We know many people will fall off Medicaid during that kind of every 6 months renewal. That's going to cost the healthcare system. That's going to cost the state. And also the work requirements will probably help some, that will not help some individuals. They will fall off Medicaid, and then those costs will fall to the state. So there's concern that that $3 billion loss is going to grow. But even with that, we've had a $17 billion over the next 2 years that have come in, which was a little higher than expected, largely, my understanding, I'm not a finance person, but largely because of the stock market doing so well. So overall, for this year, we're in pretty good shape, but there's a lot of concern about the costs to Medicaid and other things, also some decreases in funding for schools from the federal government. The next slide. So, but one of the huge initiatives that the governor is pushing is universal child care. And the next slide, just to get a sense of what universal child care involves, it's about $4.5 billion so far invested in child care across New York State. And 1.7 billion in new investments in this year's budget. That's huge. And so certainly those of you who have young families, or me, my grandkids, we know the average cost is as high as $20,000 a year for childcare if you pay for it out of pocket. That's enormous. And so having childcare truly available, going back to 2-year-olds all the way through to by the time you get to school, would be fantastic in New York State. So this is a gradual process. It's not going to happen overnight. In New York City is further along than a lot of the rest of the state, and it's a cooperative agreement between the governor and the mayor in terms of funding some of this, but it's a significant amount of funding that is coming, especially to New York City, for childcare. By 2028, it's expected that across New York State, there will be a free K4, pre-K for 4-year-olds will be free, and then it'll continue to go down as we go forward, as long as the budgets can continue to support it. So this is a great initiative and really very important for families. And I think very important to recruit people to come. If this could happen, I think you'd probably get more people coming to New York State. It would be a huge benefit, huge benefit. Next slide. It's also the governor has made some initiatives just to make life easier for people, so that you have more money in your pockets. Next slide. And this includes some considerable work again on the child-dependent childcare credit. That goes up every year. This year, an additional $576 in a child credit for 0 to 3. If you have a 0 to 3-year-old, again, helpful for New Yorkers. One of the big things that the governor, and you've probably seen this on the news, is really hopeful will go through, is to deal with some of the increasing costs of auto insurance, which is affecting New Yorkers across the state. Average $300 more than any place else in the country for auto insurance in New York State. And the governor's trying to put in place things that will deal with the bad actors, the guys who have kind of increased this we have the second highest state for those, car accidents where somebody bumps into you and then kind of is done on purpose and then they sue. We're second in the nation, something we don't want to be second in the nation in, and the number of times that happens. So that's also very costly for insurance. So basically, that's something the governor is pushing for, and also to look at looking at some of the rises in home insurance as well. So again, taking a kind of holistic view of trying to help New Yorkers deal with what's an increasing financial difficulties. The next slide. Being New Yorkers safe. This is a major initiative. Next one. It includes a whole potpourri of things which really have been very successful in decreasing crime across New York State. It has gone down, and increasing gun violence across New York State. That $352 million includes getting guns off the streets, but it also is about half of it is for community-based services to help communities learn how to fight and come together to deal with gun violence. And so it's very socially focused, a lot of those dollars. There's $77 million for the subway safety is to continue to pay for extra police, New York City police in the subways. Basically that pays for overtime for the New York City police in the subways. There's also dollars for what they call high-tech grants. A lot of this is for upstate to help, and rest of state to help communities have the technology to fight crime. And then $35 million in hate crimes dollars, which would go to organizations that are at risk to help with their security and prevention of hate crimes. And then lastly, something which is really important is to crack down on those 3D printers. I had never seen any, I don't know, I've never seen anything like this, but I saw a video where they kind of make this gun printed out from a 3D printer. It's just incredible and incredibly dangerous. So this would make it illegal to have printers that can make firearms in New York State. Okay, next slide. Second biggest expenditure of the state is Medicaid and education. So in the next slide, you can see that the governor has made incredible investments in education in during her tenure as governor. She has fully funded foundation aid. Foundation aid is a formula that says how much money schools need. And while you were always supposed to fully fund it, it wasn't being fully funded before. But since Governor Hochul's been in office, she's been fully funding school aid across the state. And basically the next slide. if you look at that $39 billion in total school aid, there's about, I believe it's about 15 to 16 billion of that comes to New York City. And of the 1.6 billion increase this year, about 600 million of that is actually coming to New York City. So there's a tremendous contribution of the state to New York City in terms of the education funding. And foundation aid being fully funded and also going to extend the mayoral control for 4 years. Next slide. This one I'm particularly happy about because when you think in terms of social determinants, one of the issues that always comes up is whether individuals have enough to eat. We also know with some of the changes in the SNAP benefits from the federal government that that's particularly problematic. But this makes sure that at least in schools across New York State, every child has a good 2 meals a day. And that is really very impressive. It costs about $395 million, but it means that 2.8 million students participate across the state, which is really incredible. And that's what I mean by a social service, social determinants budget. This has a tremendous impact on families and youth. And it also gets rid of that stigma that used to be there. New York City hasn't had this for a long time, but there was this experience in New York City years ago, and then somewhere's upstate where you had to have a voucher if you were getting it. And it kind of stigmatized the kids whose families couldn't afford or were on benefits from the other kids. This way, everybody gets the free meals and that stigma goes away. The next slide. Building, and this is housing. Housing, we know, is one of the most, the biggest challenges we're facing. Next slide. 5 years ago, the governor started a $25 billion housing plan. There was a pledge to have 100,000 supported housing units out of that $25 billion housing plan. Currently, we have 77,000 units out of that plan. And the governor put another $250 million in this year's budget to kind of jumpstart so that we can get to that 5-year total of 100,000. Again, tremendously important. If you don't have a roof over your head, or you don't have a dignified place to live, all the other things that we do in terms of healthcare can't be very effective. So this is incredible to have affordable housing across the state. And then the housing assistance program that helps people keep housing that they already have, rent vouchers or paying mortgages for a while so that people who are hitting a rough spot can continue to have their homes. Next slide. This is just dollars for those prefab houses, to invest in that and make sure that there's some places where that can grow across the state. They are not as expensive as some of the other housing that takes to build, but they're really quite nice. They're really quite, I have a friend who's had one, and you kind of don't know that this was put together in pieces from somewhere. So it's really $100 million for that. Next slide. And then, the environment, the governor has a lot of things in the environment in the budget, but just one to pay some attention to is water. We don't think about it often, but there's a $3.75 billion to make sure that the water stays clean and that we have good water systems as we build this housing. Because when you have housing, if you don't have good sewer systems and good water systems, you're in big trouble. So this is an investment in the climate. The next slide. We know that there have been some actions by the federal government that we've been able in New York to do what we have to do to protect our citizens and protecting fundamental rights. Planned Parenthood, $35 million to ensure that Planned Parenthood continues, that we don't lose the value of Planned Parenthood in our communities. Another law that the governor is sponsoring is something, the next slide, that would prevent, that would prevent ICE from making agreements with local law enforcement. Apparently this has happened in some states where they make agreements and the local law enforcement works with them, sometimes even for them. Sometimes local law enforcement jails can be used, local jails for detention centers. This act would basically, the Local Crimes Act prevents all that. It stops it and prevents people, our police forces, from working with ICE. Another, which I'm going to mention on the mental health side, was those of you, I think you're probably familiar with 988, our crisis call center. It's the crisis call center is a national number, so it goes through a national receiving line, and a fair amount of that we pay for some 988, but a lot of it is paid for by the federal government. And the federal government decided that they would eliminate the number 3, which was a special button that you could press on 988 if you were an LGBTQ youth to get some specialized services. It's very sad that that number was discontinued. The governor has given us in this year's mental health budget over $1 million to get our own crisis line in the state, which really is great because that crisis line was being used a lot by our youth, and now it will be back, at least in New York State. And we're very proud of the governor for doing that. So the next slide. Next, you can go to the next one. And now we're going to talk about mental health, which is what I love to talk about. And one of the big initiatives in this year's budget for mental health is $17.5 million to expand teen mental health first aid. And I hope you all know about teen mental health first aid, but what it is work. It's a training program. It takes about two half days where students learn about mental health, but they also learn about how to talk to each other. You know, when we did a listening tour of youth about 3 years ago with the governor, we went to schools. I went to schools. We listened to teenagers. We listened to middle schoolers. And what they said they wanted were 3 things. They wanted, first of all, to have some services in the schools. They felt that it would really be helpful to have services right there in the school, destigmatizing mental health, making it easy to get help. And we've managed now to have 1,400 school-based clinics across New York State. So we've been expanding that across the state. Second thing they said they wanted was safe spaces, sometimes after school programs, where they could go and do kind of the activities the kids love to do, but also have some mental health supports if needed. And those safe spaces would be really very, very helpful. So in past budgets, we had 8 of those that we started across the state, and we're growing them every year. So this year, in this year's budget, we have 2 more dollars for 2 more safe spaces across the state. And the third thing they said they wanted was to know how to talk to each other when a friend came to them with a problem, because we know that kids are most likely to go to their friends often first before anybody else if they're having a problem. And that's where teen mental health first aid comes in. So teen mental health first aid, we have dollars in the budget to provide it to every sophomore class across New York State. And we're going to roll it out. And within 3 years, we expect we will have set it up in all the schools, any school that wants to work with us. And the schools seem very happy, so I think they're all going to want to. So it'll be sophomores. And if you think about it, in terms of prevention and mental wellness and having a generational change in the way people think about mental health, doing this kind of work at a sophomore year level in high school, I think can have a real impact. I think when those sophomores become adults, I hope that they think differently about mental health, that they feel that they can go for help if they need it, that they can ask for help if their children need help. And we can get rid of some of the stigma that has prevented individuals from getting help early on. It ends up in some of the serious mental illness that we see. So this is very exciting, and we're just so thrilled that this is in the budget. So the next slide. Now, we had $2.5 billion over the past 4 years that have been added to the mental health budget. And I'm not going to go through it all, but I have to just show you some of the lists of things, just so you can get a sense of just how intensive that $2.5 billion is. So in prevention, a lot of schoolwork, like the mental health first aid I just talked about. Also, where do you do prevention? You do prevention in schools, and I think you also do it in pediatricians' offices, because that's where families go. So we've funded something called Healthy Steps that'll serve over 300,000 families in Medicaid. And basically Healthy Steps put a mental health practitioner in a pediatrician's office. And they work with the families that come in. You don't need a mental health diagnosis. It's really preventive, first level prevention, working with families in crisis, families that are overburdened, families in poverty, families who are in crisis maybe because one of the kids doesn't want to go to school, whatever. They will work with those families. So Healthy Steps, evidence-based practice by pediatricians. Pediatricians love it. And we've now got it in a number of practices all over the state, touching about 300,000 families. We also do a lot of suicide prevention work. We do a lot of work with communities, with adults, with kids. And we have outreach teams in some of our underserved areas that are really areas that we know aren't using mental health services, that won't come forward. And we have adults from those areas doing outreach. So a lot of preventive services, and then all the work in schools. Next slide. We also want to expand access to care. And here the governor has given us the dollars to expand our clinic services, to expand our specialized teams such as ACT teams, to expand our CPEPs, our Certified Comprehensive Emergency Programs, a whole host of things. One of the things that we started a few years ago, which we've been very excited about, are the Certified Community Behavioral Health Centers. And the Certified Community Behavioral Health Centers, we had 13 in New York State up to 4 years ago, and they've been working really, really well. They do integrated mental health and substance use care. So if you come in with both problems, you get treated for both right there. They work with individuals all the way from youth and kids and young children all the way to the elderly. It's a whole lifespan. We've also been increasing the ability for these clinics to work with individuals who are duly diagnosed with developmental disorders as well. So the Certified Community Behavioral Health Centers, I think, is kind of the clinic of the future. And we had 13 across the state. The governor gave us the dollars to expand to 39. They are also cost-based. There's something like the FQHCs. Those of you in healthcare probably know about the federally qualified health centers. These are the kind of the mental health equivalent of those federally qualified health centers. So at the end of the year, they can get reimbursed on a cost-based basis, which means that they're much more financially and fiscally viable than some of our other services, which are always struggling in terms of Medicaid and other kinds of reimbursement. So these are very exciting, and we're expanding. We'll continue to expand. They've had great results so far in terms of decreasing mental health hospitalizations, ER use, and also physical health hospitalizations and ER use. So we're very excited about this and continuing to grow it. The other piece which we're excited about is insurance reform. It's not just Medicaid in the world of mental health. It's commercial insurance as well. And one of the big things which was passed last year, but is now becoming active, is the fact that commercial insurers, as well as Medicaid, have to give a mental health appointment within 10 days. Routine mental health appointment. I don't know if you've ever had, but I know my family members have, and friends have kind of gone through those directories that list mental health people, but they're never available, or they say that they no longer really have that kind of insurance. So this legislation that was passed last year said, first of all, your directories have to be honest. You have to give an appointment within 10 days. And if you can't, then you've got to go out of network, and you've got to not put the cost on the member. The member, you should pay for the out of network extra cost. Now, this became law as of July of last year. We gave them some time to kind of get up to speed, but now we're at the point where we really want to hear from everybody if this isn't working. Because we know, for example, when parity laws were passed over 20 years ago, it has taken many years to enforce those parity laws. And we know that we have to watch this law and make sure that it really happens. So we need everybody's input if it's not happening. And there's a number that you can call called CHAMPS, and CHAMPS will work with individuals. We have lawyers, they answer the phone so that they can work to make sure the insurers do what they're supposed to do. There's also going to be a big campaign from the Department of Financial Services. Real access, real care means real access. And you'll be seeing this campaign coming forward. So please get the word out. A couple more things on mental health in this year's budget. Can you go to the next one? Oh, and just one more thing from the older budgets is complex care. And I'm going to talk about some of these a little bit later, but specialized teams to work with the homeless, specialized teams to work with hospital discharges, increase in beds across the system. So there's a lot has been done to increase the specialty care. Next slide. In this current budget, these are the things that were in this budget. Just to give you a few of them. One is the targeted inflationary increase, 1.7%, although the Assembly and Senate have put in some proposals to up that a little bit. The First Responder Behavioral Health Center of Excellence, that's something we're going to be doing jointly with OASAS. We've also received about $65 million for housing. I said before about the LGBTQ youth and youth safe spaces. And we had received some dollars to give to the tribal nations across the state for their schools. Tribal nations are sovereign states, and so we can work with them, but they decide what they want to do. And so we've been working together over the past 2 years since the governor called together all the tribal nations, and they have issues with their youth, just like we do. And so we have some programs which we're working on, working together with them for them to design. So those are very exciting things that are added in this year's budget. And then finally, the governor's work with cell phones and kids. And last year there was the legislation to stop the addictive feeds for social media. This year, stopping addictive feeds for games. Kids get on the games and they get these same kinds of addictive feeds. Also stopping the use of AI for youth, that in terms of any kind of talking kind of therapy kind of like thing, to stop that. And then also, as you know, taking cell phones out of schools. A couple of quick updates on some selective initiatives. And I know there's a lot of concern about the homeless, unsheltered, and serious mentally ill in New York State. It's not just a New York City problem, it's statewide. And it's not just a New York State problem, it's nationwide. And what our piece of working with these individuals is something called the Safe Options Support Teams. And the Safe Options Support Teams are teams that work with the most challenging individuals that are unsheltered. These are the individuals who really refuse services consistently. And they don't trust us, they don't trust the system, and they live unsheltered on the streets and in the subways. So these teams work very closely with the MTA, we work with the police, we work in terms of referrals coming from them. We get referrals from the other teams who are often successful in helping people move into safe haven beds or into shelter beds. So our teams go out and work on a caseload basis. They follow individuals very closely, trying to connect with them, trying to work with them. And basically in New York City, we've been successful in housing almost 1,000 of these individuals in permanent housing. I'm not talking about a shelter bed. I'm talking about permanent housing. And we're doing it through something called Housing First, where these individuals, when they're ready, get into housing, and then this team stays with them as long as necessary until they're comfortable in the housing and they're connected to whatever future services. And it's made a huge difference. And these 1,000 individuals, 80% stay housed. And some of these individuals have been on the streets for decades. When you actually talk with people on the streets, you begin to realize that for some of them, this has become their life. And they really don't see anything beyond that. That's what these teams help them to see. We expanded this to the rest of state. And the rest of state, we've been successful in housing almost another 700 individuals across rest of state, and working in the same model that we do in New York City, and with Housing First. Now, some individuals need, next slide, may need inpatient services. And just to also highlight the number of beds that the governor has opened, she's opened almost 700 community beds, 642 community beds that were closed during COVID, and added 358 state hospital beds. That's the first addition in state hospital beds in decades. 50 of those beds are specialized beds to work with the homeless mentally ill. Next, I believe is the next slide. Called our Transitions to Home unit. And these are individuals who are often brought in involuntarily for services. They come into the hospital. Most of them come into Bellevue first, are seen at Bellevue, and then come very quickly over to our Transition to Home unit in Manhattan Psychiatric Center. And the Transition to Home unit has now served, about 150 individuals. Most of them stay with us somewhere in the range of 9 to 10 months. They come in initially involuntary, but become voluntary and work and stay with us because they begin to trust us. These are the most challenging individuals in terms of living unsheltered. on the streets of the city and in the subways. Again, working with them, kind of getting to understand what's really important to them, reaching out to them for their goals and their dreams and believe me, they have them, their aspirations. We've been able to get them all permanently housed when they leave. Some of them drift back to the streets, we know that, but 60% remain in permanent housing and 77% are still working with us. So that's huge. I know it doesn't seem like 100%, but it's incredible that those individuals, and I can tell you very stories that a woman hadn't seen her sister in 10 years, and her sister had been looking for her for 10 years, and she was living in the subway for 10 years. And when she finally trusted us, worked with us, we got her into housing, and now she sees her sister on a regular basis, and they're back together, and she's involved in accepting services. So it can be done, but it takes time and it's slow. Next couple of slides I'll go through really quickly. I know another issue people have been concerned about is individuals who come to hospitals and then seem not to stay very long, but when they leave, they don't get the services, and then they come back. Or they come into the emergency room and then they come back again. So we are across the city attaching teams to hospitals that will work with individuals that are challenging when they leave and challenging when they leave the EDs. And this will help. Attached to these teams are transitional beds. Now the beds aren't up yet because it takes a while sometimes to find transitional beds in the community. But the teams will have transitional beds, so individuals can leave, have a safe place to be for several months if they need it, stay in those beds, and then transition into more stable work, stable housing. And again, working with those individuals that we know are the most challenging. And then lastly, just to talk a little bit about the crisis system. Oh, I just have to highlight this one. We have over 51,000 supportive housing units for individuals with mental illness in New York State. That is huge. There's no other state that has that level of housing. By supported housing, we mean they're living either in an apartment or in a more congregate housing, but with lots of mental health supports. That's incredible. And those individuals are thriving in the community, and we have 6,500 more in the pipeline, and much of the governor's investment was to add to this. And then lastly, if you could just jump to the next one on the comprehensive next crisis services, 988, please get the word out about 988. 988 is not just it is for individuals who may be in a suicidal crisis, but it's not just that, it's a counseling line, and anybody can call anytime. The average length of time on the call 988 is 20 minutes. So a lot of individuals call. In fact, one of the most frequent calls are about relationships. People calling about either their child is having some trouble in school, or they're talking about a relationship between them and their spouse or their partner or their family member. Those relationships. Second is for individuals who have suicidal ideas. So basically, please get the word out. They can also refer to mobile crisis teams, which is the next box. So if someone is in a crisis that would require attention, mobile crisis team can be sent out. They can also refer to crisis stabilization centers, which are coming up. We don't have everyone, but they're growing across the state. They're an alternative to an emergency room. When someone really does need some intensive work, they could go to a crisis stabilization center. And then we're also growing crisis residences. These are short-term places where individuals can have respite and feel comfortable. Okay, one more slide. Yes, this was in last year's budget. We have 3 pilots, and this is a health-led crisis response. In New York City, you probably heard of Be Heard. I know the mayor is going to be revamping Be Heard, but this is the response when someone calls 911. And the ultimate goal here is to connect 911 and 988 so that basically individuals who can be seen by a mental health professional or a peer get seen by them as opposed to the police. Doesn't mean you won't need the police sometimes. And then we do a lot of training for the police so that they can know how to work with individuals, but many mental health calls can go to mental health professionals. And then lastly, just to say that Mental Health America, which is a big mental health advocacy program for mental health, actually rated all the states on 17 parameters And the parameters were things all the way from access to care to insurability, to whether or not students in high school had suicidal ideation. And they put together all those 17 parameters. And when they ranked the states, New York State came out #1. So I just have to say that. It's really a huge thank you to all the providers out there and everybody who provides the services, to all the organizations that support us, to everyone who really takes on mental health. So it's a huge thank you to everybody, to all of you for your interest in mental health. We may not always be #1, but I think while you are, you want to kind of say it because, but we're not where we need to be by any means, but we are on, I think, a good path, and that good path, especially with this governor. So I just had to kind of shout that one out at the end. So I'll stop there and see if there's any questions or comments.
That was fabulous. I'm trying to keep up. I just want to let the room start. I see Yaron's hand up, so go for it, Yaron.
Yeah, so Commissioner, thank you so much. That was an extremely thorough and helpful presentation. And really a lot of good information. I want to come back to the question of inpatient psychiatric beds. It's great to see that number tick back up. You said it had been the first sort of addition in a long time at the state level. It's my understanding that at least here in the city, but that we are still at sort of quite a deficit from where we need to be. It's something that we've advocated for many years as a board. First of all, is that true from your perspective that we still need more? And I guess I would just ask, I mean, we're a city body, not a state body, but I would ask, like, if that is true, what recommendations you have about what we can do to be more successful in our advocacy for more of those beds? You know, we think it's really important, and any advice you have would be welcome.
When you look, you know, it's interesting. When you look at the, we have about, statewide, we have over 6,000, about 6,500 community-based beds. And then we have about 3,000 state beds. So that brings us up to about 9,000 beds. That's probably one of the highest bed ratios in the nation, just to say first. Second is when you look at occupancy, and that doesn't mean that at any point in time, you might not have in a hospital someone waiting for a bed. But when you look at the overall occupancy in New York State and New York City, the occupancy in the beds is somewhere between 85% and 90%. That gives you leeway. You don't want to be over 90% because over 90% often means there's a lot of people waiting. So we monitor this pretty closely. So I don't know that it's so much beds that are needed. We will also monitor something from the state Department of Health calls the HERDS data, where they look at how many people are waiting in the emergency rooms. So we monitor that to keep an eye on it. It doesn't mean that you can't have sometimes when there's a spike, but overall we're running in this 85%, 86% occupancy. When you get too low in occupancy, financially you have trouble. And you don't want to be people you don't need to admit. So I don't know. I think, you know, we may need a few more beds, but let me just say this, that there's another probably about 60 to 80 beds that'll be coming up in the city that are not yet opened. That partly because they were COVID, some of them were COVID beds, and some of them are beds that people, that hospitals have recently started to add. So I think when all those beds are up and running, especially in New York City, now upstate gets complicated because of distances, but within New York City, I think when all those beds that are still in the pipeline to open are opened, I think we have to wait and look a little bit before we think about adding more psych beds. What we still need a lot of are those wraparound services when somebody leaves. Your readmission rates to the hospitals is still, you know, 25, 26%. Wow, that's high. You know, if you got that down to 10%, you'd have tons of beds. So I think it's still those wraparound services that are really important that we get more and more of. So we need your advocacy for that. We need it for housing. We need it for community-based services. And I think we should look at the beds and keep an eye on it because you do want to make sure that you have enough beds. Also the state, we're adding, there will be 75 more state beds that are coming up in New York City. over the next few, we had to make room for them in the current structure, so we had to do some reconstruction, but we're expecting 50 of those to open next year too. So there's some more in the pipeline, state and community. So I think we should wait a little bit and see, but we need those community-based intensive wraparound services and housing.
That's really helpful advice. Thank you.
So I have a question. If I may. So how many of the social services staff, the personnel you have specifically focused in like Manhattan? Is that number has grown over time? And if not, what are you guys doing about it? I'm just curious.
Let me just, if you look at, there's groups of social services staff, there's individuals employed by the state, and then there's individuals employed by all the programs that we license around the state. Generally, half of the workforce, somewhere in the range of 40 to 45% of everything is in New York City versus the rest of state. Let me just say that. So it always falls that way pretty much. So when you're saying how many people there are, there's a fair amount of individuals. However, we have a workforce crisis because we don't have enough anywhere, including Manhattan. And why don't we have enough? That's a national issue. It's in terms of people coming out of schools. It's in terms of the kinds of catching up. The governor, I said, is adding a lot of money with an inflationary increase, but we're far behind. We've been behind for decades in terms of payment for social workers, psychologists, etc. I mean, we don't pay as well for that as we do for a lot of other things. So while I could say that the workforce is significant in Manhattan, there's still a workforce shortage in Manhattan, and the workforce shortage is in terms of recruiting people into the public system. And partly it's financial, but partly it's also just getting people interested. So we're doing a lot of work with schools, we're doing work with loan repayments, we're doing work with scholarships to get people, to get our young people coming forward to have the experience of working in the public sector. If you look at New York, Manhattan, and you look at social workers, psychologists, psychiatrists, I'll say psychiatrists as well, overall, we have more people sitting in Manhattan than any place, than probably most of the country per capita.
Right.
But many of them are in the private sector. We've got to get more people into the public sector to serve, the middle class and, Medicaid.
Yeah, I'm sorry if I wasn't clear with my question.
Oh,
I was
sorry.
more referring to the staff that does the outreach, actually, like speaking to the people on the streets. That's
Oh, I'm
what I
sorry.
really-
I'm sorry. Yeah,
No,
there
no.
we have 20 teams in New York City, and we have I think 10 a good 2/3 of them are in Manhattan. Majority are Manhattan. We don't have as many. We only have one on Staten Island, so the others are split between Manhattan, Bronx, and and a lot of them are in Manhattan. I think it's 4 teams. I can get you the exact number. 4 or 5 teams in Manhattan. And the teams are 25 people on the teams. And they work out at various parts of the subway system. And now we're beginning to eat more onto the streets. There's tons of other agencies that have outreach workers on the streets in Manhattan. I don't know the exact numbers of those, but there's a lot of them. And I would say there's more than several hundred of those in Manhattan. And probably more of the homeless outreach teams are in Manhattan than any other borough.
I haven't seen many people reaching out to individuals on the streets personally, and I'm in the city every day. I'm just saying, I
Because
haven't
they're usually
seen.
wearing shirts. Our guys wear purple, others wear orange, others wear green.
I mean, I see homeless people all over in our district,
Sure.
and I haven't seen one person talking to them, trying to talk them out of getting off the street. I'm just saying that I think
Okay, yeah, sure.
maybe I should be a tour guide too.
No, no, I'm not, I don't know that we have enough. I don't know that we have enough. I think Manhattan has a good proportion of what's there for sure. But you're right. I don't, you might not be seeing them all the time, but they're kind of there. Although I'm sure I'm sure you haven't seen them. You know, I ride the subways a lot too. I notice them maybe a little bit more, but I agree with you. I can go several days and not see somebody, weeks sometimes. But I know my guys are out there. I know they're out there, so.
Thank you, sorry.
Thank you, Lev. Any other
Um,
questions in the room or online? Go ahead, Melissa, if you want to call
Uh,
on people, so I can't see.
Yeah, well, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you so much, Commissioner, for everything you presented. I did want to hear more about the wraparound services that you mentioned. But also just looking at the city as a whole, I mean, we're in the middle of Manhattan, so one of our biggest issues is people sleeping on the streets and people with mental health issues. And so if beds aren't the problem, obviously affordable housing, I think is the biggest issue. But what do you think are the biggest issues stopping us from giving mental health services to these folks? And is that the wraparound services? And or is it something else? I mean, what do you see the challenges going forward in the next few years of how to best provide mental health services to this population?
Yeah, I think I'd emphasize two pieces, and you said both of them. The first, thank you. One of them is the wraparound services. You need to have people who can consistently be with them, like these teams that we have, who can work with them over time, so they don't get moved from one team to the next team to the next. And you need to have enough of that. The other thing you need is housing, and you need housing that there's something called Housing First, which works particularly well with this population of individuals. In other words, when someone's ready finally to say, okay, I'll go with you to a housing, if you bring them to a shelter, they'll be out in 2 days. But if you have a place for them to be alone, because often they don't want to be around people, that's why they're on the street, for them to be alone in a safe place where they can have a room, small apartment, you can get them right in there, they tend to stay. That's not easy to do in New York City nowadays. That's expensive. You have to have it. You have to have it. That's where we've been successful with 1,000 people. You have to have it ready. You have to have it waiting. You can't say, oh, you really want an apartment or a place to live? I'll find it. I'll take me 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 2 months, 3 months. I've got to get you in right away. Housing First works with this population, but you've got to have it ready. It costs money. And then you have to have the team stay with the individual, because when someone's been on the streets for 10 years, they don't just easily connect to housing and to maybe something which isn't in the same neighborhood they were in. So it's a very intricate process. It can be done, but you need the teams and you need the access to housing. And the access to housing is one of the toughest, I mean, I'm just telling you the toughest things. I mean, we've been successful with some landlords, but citing congregate housing is a nightmare. People don't want, as soon as they hear that, yeah, and believe me, if you've ever seen any of our housing, supportive housing, it's beautiful. I mean, it's great apartments, it's beautiful, but still neighborhoods are afraid. And so as much as they want people on the street, they also don't want the housing. So you're caught in this thing. So we need housing and we need the supports. And those are our two biggest challenges. And if the
So are
housing
you guys
were easy.
are you guys going to be using that Housing First model, and are you going to be expanding that?
Yes,
Is that
yeah,
the plan?
we are. We're trying to, and we're just put out an RP for another 200 units for that kind of Housing First model. It cuts through the red tape. It's hard to cut through the red tape for everything because, you know, depending on what your funding source. See, this is purely funded state money with no ties to anything else, so we can cut through the red tape.
Great, thank you.
Mike?
Yeah, a great presentation, Commissioner. Couple of things. I'm a tour guide. I walk around the city constantly on the streets in the Garment District mainly. And I have a problem apologizing for the homelessness, people on the streets. Secondly, with the sidewalk sheds, but the homelessness is really hits you right in the face. And the more we can do to prevent that is great. So I want to tell you something that I think you would find interesting, and we all might. I spent Sunday on Staten Island.
Okay.
And on Staten Island, I went with my partner, Jean Marie, who who volunteers for an outfit called Off the Streets.
Mhm.
And we went to the U-Haul where they have the furniture, beds and bedding and microwaves and lamps and linens and curtains. And we went to a home of a couple with 3 children in Staten Island in a beautiful apartment that they were given in Staten Island by the agency that
Mhm.
found it there. And we carried up all
Great.
this stuff that we brought, put them together, the beds, you know, with the screws and the Allen keys and the women hung the curtains and it's a volunteer thing. It's through the church that Jimmy works, goes to. And these people, these guys come up with their trucks. They carry the refrigerator and they don't need, I haven't seen any refrigerators, but they carry all of this dressers and drawers and mirrors and they install it all. It takes us about 3 or 4 hours, maybe 10 people are doing it. And it's just such a good feeling that
Yes.
it gives to me and to others who volunteer and do this, that somehow this kind of a operation could be promoted.
Mhm.
More of these homeless people who are found, they have to have a home for us to bring in the stuff. But it just creates a feeling of these people, they're gonna stay there. They're not
Yeah,
gonna,
absolutely.
and so what it is a volunteer by the citizenry.
Yep.
Who, through the church in this case, happens to be doing all of this, makes you feel good to volunteer. Made me feel like $1 million, tell you the
Yeah,
truth.
that's
Really
great.
helping out. So if the state somehow can get these kind of organizations, mostly through religious, you know, the churches and the synagogue, to volunteer and get together, people, they get a good feeling from it. It's better than money, you know? Most,
You know, look, that's
just
one,
you'd be interested in
that's
hearing
wonderful.
about.
It's wonderful. Thank you so much for that. Thank you so, so much. And I think you're right. I think we haven't used the power of volunteer as much as we could. I agree with you. We veer towards other things, but it's tremendously resourceful. And I agree with you. It's a wonderful giving experience. And when you've done it, you know, it's like, you know, it does as much for the volunteer as it does for the person you're providing whatever
There you
help to. And so, and it's that kind of neighborhood connection, which is just wonderful. So thank you for that. And you're right. We should do more with volunteers. We really should. I mean, that's exciting. We do some, but we should do more. We should do more. That's great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other
Anybody
questions?
else?
Mary? No, I think we can go online.
Yeah, I've had my hand up for a while.
Yep. Go ahead, David.
Thank you, Dr. Sullivan, for this. You know, I've been in the city now for about 25 years, and the mental health and homeless population is gotten so materially bad over the past few years. I know that you've been in this seat for about over a decade. I mean, what do you see as the rationale here, the reasons here? I mean, I understand that housing is tight. We have a plentiful shelter system that houses seemingly most folks who are mentally stable and not using drugs where they can use the shelter system. But we still have a very significant population on the street. And so I guess I'm just trying to understand what's happened over the past decade that has caused this many more folks to be on the street. And I also have another follow-up question as well.
Yeah, I think, okay, let me try to say a couple things. First of all, if you go way back, I've been around more than, I should admit it, more than 25 years.
Sure.
In the 70s, 80s, we had more. I know it's hard to believe, but it was, anyone was around then and walked into Grand Central Station or some of the other places where I worked on homeless outreach teams then when I was just starting out. So while it's very visible and very there, it's been a thorny problem for a long time. Let me just say that. And in some ways, I don't know if it's more or if in some ways we've become more conscious of it in a good way, that we see it and we want to stop it. Whenever these counts are done, it's about somewhere around 2,000 to 2,500 individuals with mental illness. That's not everybody, who are living in like the subways and on the streets in particularly Manhattan. So it's a number. It's not a good number, but it's a number. And so it gives you a sense of the breadth of the problem. I think I do believe that housing has made it more problematic. The lack of housing in New York City, our vacancy rate for anything in New York City, any kind of housing. No, but be careful here. You know, we look for housing, we look for apartments. I can't find them sometimes for individuals because the rents are too high and the government can't pay those kinds of really, really high rents that are out there. So you got to consider that. You've also got to consider that I spent years trying to get a couple of, in certain parts of the city, I won't say which parts, housing built, and we can't get it built because of NIMBYism. So there's things that begin to slow down your progress. I'm not saying it causes the whole thing, but it slows down your progress of working with these individuals and helping them get the kind of really the assistance that they need to live the kinds of lives they want to live. The shelter system for these individuals is terribly frightening. They're not going to go into the shelter system. So you need to have something for them, which is something where they have their own space. That's expensive right now in New York City. We have double apartments, but it's hard. Some of our guys don't want a roommate, and I don't blame them. You know, they can't, they won't go in with someone with a roommate. That's part of their pathology that they can't. So all I'm saying is housing is a big
but it strikes me that these folks are it seems that the housing is it's a challenge, obviously, but it's not the challenge. I mean, what percentage of folks, I mean, there was laws that have been passed over the last few years that have allowed for involuntarily taking people off the streets.
Mhm.
Are those being how is that being enforced right now?
We've been monitoring the involuntary. Now, again, the involuntary taking people off there's three criteria. Danger to self, or imminent danger to self or others. That means it's got to be pretty imminent. That doesn't fit the kind of guys by and large that you're talking about. Some of them it does. They may be threatening something like that. Then yes, you can hospitalize.
There's lots of threatening people in the streets, and this was not the case 10 or 15 years ago.
Oh, don't be so sure. Don't be so sure. Don't be so sure. But yes,
I mean, I've seen people
I'm not saying that they're not there.
I've seen people get punched in subways. I've seen homeless folks.
My sister, I shouldn't
very different environment.
I don't want to insist this, but my sister-in-law was punched 40 years ago in Central Park by somebody who just walked past. All I'm saying is
40 years ago, though.
But listen, just no, I'm talking about many years ago. So let me just say this: you're not wrong. I'm not disagreeing with you. I live in the city. I live in the city. I don't live wrong. I live in the city. I grew up in the city. I've been there since I was in Queens. Now I'm in Manhattan. I live in the city. So I know exactly what you're saying. And it's very real and it's very much there and it's very much a problem. I'm not saying that. So how do you solve it? Housing is critical. The other is engaging people in treatment. You can say, put them all in a hospital or something. It's not going to work, guys. It doesn't work because you need to have the right community-based services around someone so that they begin to see a different way to live. Now, I know that doesn't answer your question as simply as you would like it to happen, but think about it for a minute. How many people with diabetes don't follow what they're supposed to do for their diabetes? How many people with heart disease?
So this is another.
Some of it is the individual, yes, but we
sure.
Them.
But this is another issue. And so I interviewed a bunch of folks in the city here on this issue. And there's no coordination by city agencies. There's no coordination by state agencies. There's no system that tracks individuals across all of these different agencies. And it strikes me that we're throwing lots of dollars at this problem, and there's just 100 people moving in different directions on this problem. And it's getting worse and worse, and there's more money. I mean, the budget's up, 45% in the past decade? I don't know the answer. It seems like there needs to be a more, a bigger effort to coordinate agency services.
I agree with you.
To take care of these individuals and take the folks who are violent off of the streets, because I'm not seeing that.
No, look, I think better coordination, cooperation is always important. and always possible. And I agree with you. I think we have to get better at that, and that's our responsibility. So I absolutely agree with you that we could do that better. We could do it better. I think we are coming at it. One of the things which I talked about, which I didn't go into the detail with, but these connecting with the hospital system so that we can keep track of the individuals who are leaving and have teams that know where they are. That's exactly what you're talking about, and
Sure.
making sure that they get the services that they need and they stay with them when they leave a hospital or an emergency room. We don't have that in place the way it should be. I agree with you.
Is there an outreach to, I mean, we have lots of young.
David, can you finish
Sure.
up so we can have some more
Sure.
questions?
We
Okay,
have
please.
lots of young tech professionals and tech businesses in this city. And I'm sure there are philanthropic arms that could provide some technology services to coordinate these efforts, because it strikes me that that is desperately needed within this infrastructure.
Well, I think we could do more of that. We do have a database that we've been working on that's there so that anybody comes into an emergency room who has a psych history, it's available for someone to really see all the places they've been. And what's been happening. So we're getting there. We're getting there so that people can see it. Now it's getting the system to be as accountable as you're talking about, accountable to make sure. And that's got to be, that does need to be improved. I'm not arguing with you about that. That's what we're trying to do. But you're right. Yes, that kind of accountability to make sure that when someone hits our doorstep for help, that they don't get lost.
Yep. Thank you for your time.
Well,
Thank you.
thank you.
Michael Greeley, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I just want to get some clarification on the housing unit numbers. You said at the beginning there was 100,000 supportive housing goal for 5 years, and there's 75,000 have been done already. And then there was 51,000 supportive mental health housing units with 6,500 more to come. And then there's 1,000 homeless individuals in New York City and 700 outside of New York City permanently housed. Are these all the same units being counted within that 75,000, and where are these? I mean, are they in Manhattan? Are they inside the 5 boroughs?
Yeah.
Can you have more information on that?
Yeah, sure. The 100,000 units that the governor talked about, that's not just supported housing, that's housing across the state. About half of that housing is downstate, is city, and half of that housing is rest of state. So that includes the whole panoply of affordable housing. That's the governor. Within affordable housing, there's something called supported housing, which is the housing for individuals, not just with mental illness, but veterans, people with other kinds of disabilities, people with substance use issues, people with physical disabilities, the elderly. That supported housing is about 15% of that 100,000. Of the total 100,000, 77,000 are out there that the governor promised. Now, if you look at housing for the seriously mentally ill, housing that has been growing not in the last 5 years, but really over the course of about 25 years. If you add up all that housing that is now currently there and occupied by individuals with serious mental illness, that's about 51,000 units of housing. And some of those are new and we're part of that 100,000. And some of them have already existed prior to that. Okay, so it is a combination of the numbers. The 6,000 that I mentioned that are in the pipeline are specifically 6,000 of that remainder of the 100,000 that will be there for individuals with serious mental illness. Okay, so out over the next several years. So the housing kind of numbers are kind of complicated, and basically you have to kind of separate them out. The 1,000 that we housed permanently are embedded in that 51,000 number from the city. How many housing units are actually like in the city? It's about half of all the housing units. How many in Manhattan? I don't know. I'd have to get back to you on that. What's the actual breakdown? A lot of the newer housing that we've put up has been in the Bronx and Brooklyn. But there's other housing that for a long time in the past was in Manhattan. So I'd have to get you those numbers in terms of housing in Manhattan. I don't know exactly.
Thank you.
Yeah, Alice, go ahead.
So thank you so much for the presentation, for the opportunity to hear directly. This is clearly an important topic that
Could you stand closer to your microphone, please?
pretty
speak
close to my
louder?
microphone. Give me a second. I'm gonna need to change my settings. Let me know.
Right, it's pretty.
Is this better? Oh,
Yeah.
there we go. Yeah, it's the default Zoom settings. They keep on screwing with me. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us. This is clearly an issue that all of us here feel very passionately about and figuring out how to solve it, even if there is disagreement and questions about the way to get there. What keeps me up at night, and I would really appreciate your perspective on this, is when you're solving something really complex without really a clear timeline or deadline by when you are supposed to solve it, it is very difficult to keep things on track and to have motivation to kind of keep moving in the right direction. There's a lot of individuals that are motivated by doing things because it's the right thing to do and by kind of trying to take a stab at it. But to the point, some of the folks that brought up earlier today that we're kind of trying a bunch of different things and throwing things at a wall, watching what sticks, and that yields to more and more money being spent without necessarily a clear direction for when we're expecting the problem to be fixed. Is there any sort of strategy or vision or clarity by, let's say, we want by 2030 to see that this is working, otherwise we're going to pivot and try something different? Is there any sort of clarity on the overall, let's say, 3-year timeline, 5-year timeline, 10-year timeline by which we should expect the condition to meaningfully change? Otherwise, we need to kind of go back to the drawing board and decide that we're attacking this just completely the wrong way. Thank you.
Yeah, no, it's a very good question. It's a very important question. And I think, as you say, it's complex. So it's kind of hard to say exactly, but what we're hoping to see, and I guess from what you're saying, you haven't been seeing it certainly yet in Manhattan, but we're hoping to see as we begin to permanently house these individuals, which the numbers keep going up. I mean, now it's about 1,000, over the past 2 years, it's about 1,000 individuals, many of whom are on the streets for a long time. We're hopeful as we begin to see that. If the numbers are correct, that somewhere in the range of, there's still 2,000 people, perhaps, at least by the last count, on mentally ill. I'm just talking about the mentally ill. There's a whole bunch of other people who are on the streets that are there. Then if we can keep that going, now there's an influx, it's not like, but if we can keep that going, we should be able to see a significant decrease in the next couple of years in terms of getting down the number of seriously mentally ill who are living unsheltered on the streets or in the subways. And we don't know. The count for this year isn't out yet. We don't know if that number has gone down or not. And it was complicated by, they were supposed to do it that day of the freezing spell. And so it's been put off, but we get these counts yearly. That's one way to know if we're really having a dent. What we see isn't always what might be changing. And what might be changing might still be happening. If you look at the crime statistics in New York, for example, the numbers are clearly showing that it's getting better. And yet when something terrible happens, the public says, well, it's not getting better because, there wasn't bad gunshot in Brooklyn or something. We're facing the same issue. We have to look at the numbers. We have to see if what we're doing with a whole host of initiatives with the homeless mentally ill, our particular teams, the other teams. The city has opened up transitional beds that they're going to be using for individuals leaving the hospitals. They will be helping individuals with medical problems. We've increased the housing and the housing first numbers. So there's a number of initiatives. It's a complex problem. You don't know which of them is having the exact impact, but you try to look at the global numbers over time. We haven't had, what we've seen is a steady state between the last couple of years. It wasn't going up by the counts. Now you might argue whether the counts are good or not, but we haven't seen the counts yet for last year out, and we haven't seen them yet for this year. So we've got to get those and see what will happen. But that's what we're trying to use as a barometer. And if they go up, then you're right. There's something we ain't doing right at all. If they can start to go down, then we know that maybe we're having an impact from all these various initiatives. Teasing out which are the most effective can be very difficult. But we can look at people who stay in housing once we get them in. We've got those numbers. And we can look at the numbers who are getting hospitalized. We can use those numbers, but it's hard to know. You're right, though. We have to try to figure out as best we can what the impact is of what we're doing and keep our eye on the numbers and see if we're really having an impact that New Yorkers can actually see.
I have a quick follow-up, if allowable, which is that I know that, and I think you touched on it already kind of as well, which is that there might be a little bit of a disconnect between the crime statistics and the actual data and the numbers of what's going on and the safety that all of us feel just walking around in the district and walking around Manhattan. Are there any sort of community surveys that are evaluating not the reality of the situation, but just kind of the general sentiment and feeling of safety by those that live in the city? Is that a KPI that is currently being tracked? And would there be interest in measuring that and seeing that? Because it's going to take quite a while for New Yorkers to feel safer on the street, and it would almost require like an intentional PR campaign in order for that public sentiment to change alongside with the data.
Yeah, no, it's a very good. I don't think we have any good survey like that going on now. We have anecdotal things on both sides. We have anecdotal from people saying, yeah, they think it's getting better, and anecdotal people say it's just getting worse. It ain't getting any better. But we don't have the kind of survey you're talking about, which would help to tease that out. And that would be very important to do. So it's a good idea. I'll bring it back to see if we can try to get something from people so that people can kind of give us their direct feedback about what they think is going on. But we have anecdotal reports on both sides.
With that, I'd kind of open it up to the rest of the committee if there's interest in kind of reiterating support behind an initiative like this to give a voice to a lot of this kind of fear and anxiety and skepticism that all of this is working. I would almost view and I'm a consultant, so I do organizational change management as my day job. And so I know quite a bit about the art and science of changing hearts and minds. And so I would view the kind of the efforts that are ongoing to change the reality of the situation, or almost completely disjointed and separate from the efforts that would need to happen. And I would imagine that this is something that money would need to be put towards to not just make the city safer, but also make people feel safer in the city. And those two don't always go hand in hand. And I just propose to the folks on this committee to consider reiterating the significance of that second initiative and what we can do to support and enable the city in executing a survey like this, and also allocating funding to create that feeling of safety and what it would take to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Alice. That was great. Kevin, go ahead.
Thank you. Commissioner, thank you so much for your time this evening. You've been very generous. I just have one quick question. I actually work at Robinhood, so I'm fairly familiar with everything that you talked about tonight. Thank you so much for all you do. But I am, as a resident of Midtown North, I am very curious to know what sort of data exists around the origins of homeless people on the street that have mental challenges. Where do we know that they are coming from? In other words, are they people that sort of, were in New York at one time and then somehow found their way to the street, or did they find their way here from some other municipality, other state? Is there a reliable source that you all use to sort of ascertain that? And if not, have you all been in conversation with the city or county of Los Angeles? Because I do believe they are doing it.
Yeah, we don't have good data on that. I'll tell you right now that we don't. We don't have good data on individuals. We have just some reports from, just from knowing some of the stories that come, but we don't have good data. And if Los Angeles is doing it in a way that's effective, often it's hard to get that information from individuals. You can get it down the road of getting to know them because they kind of just push you away while you're on the streets. But I think anecdotally, it's a whole panoply of issues, but it would be interesting to try to put together exactly the pathways of individuals ending up being homeless. And I think that mentally ill homeless.
Yes, yes.
So yeah, but that's a very important question. And no, we don't have good data on it. And
Yeah, because
I'll talk to Los Angeles. I will. I'll
yeah.
see what they're doing.
Thank you. Thank you. It just strikes me as something to think about, because in Midtown, I feel like sometimes we are a little overrepresented in terms of like the number of mentally ill homeless people that live in our community, relative to, like, say, when I lived on the Upper West Side. Just not to say they didn't have it, but it certainly wasn't on every corner of my block. There are 4 people that have been living here for the last year. It's the same 4 people, I know that. And oddly, I'm going to just say, what was the big event that we just had in Midtown? It wasn't a parade. It wasn't, somebody was here. Oh, during the UN. Not anybody. I didn't see a single homeless person for 2 weeks. I mean, not a person. Where'd those people go? Where'd they go? Because the minute Secret Service left, the minute the street was opened, there they were. And so it just begs the question of, like, are we really doing all we can do? I don't have any sort of malice toward any of these people. I think it's inhumane the way we treat them, because they're living on the street, for God's sake, and they have mental challenges, and they should have care. And that's our society's responsibility. But on the other hand, I do notice that on occasion, living in Midtown North, there's a swoop, and I want to know where they go. And the last one was during the UN, and I'd like to know where they're coming from. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Kevin. Is there any other committee member that has a question or comment before I go to the public, and then let these wonderful people go for the rest of their evening? Okay. I see one person from the public on. If there's anybody that wants to ask a question or have a comment, I'll leave it open for a minute or a couple seconds. Okay. Surprised we had more people on earlier. Okay, well, if we have no more questions in the room, I want to say thank you. As you can tell, our CV5 is very passionate about so many things that you spoke about tonight. It's a lot of what is in the heart of what we face and what we are trying to do as volunteers ourselves by being on community boards and being, a voice for our public and our community. And anything we can do to, I think there's probably a lot of things that we can do to get more the word out there better, support more components if we know about them. We can't know everything. So when something comes to our attention, and like Alice was saying, get behind some more initiatives and create more support. We are very much about that and happy to do that. So anytime anything you can think of that we can do for your office, for the state, for those within our community, please reach out to us. We are so thankful that you all showed up today, and I'm thankful for those that also showed up to the pre-meeting with me on Friday, taking the time out. This is really what Manhattan faces a lot. The state, yes, and really in Midtown. So we're very passionate about helping in any way that we can, and have lots of questions. So yes, I'm glad the committee came with fabulous questions and concerns tonight. And again, we just thank you all for being here so much.
Well, thank you. And thank you for your concern and your compassion and your interest. I mean, I think it's something that, yes, we need to work together on. I think it's complex. I think that I really appreciate where you're all coming from. I thank you for that, really, because I think you really want to help and to work, and we'd be glad to work with you. And you had some great ideas. which I think I may follow up. I may give a few of you a call and look at what we can do, because I think, it's so important to work in partnership with the communities on these things, and that's what we try to do. So I really do appreciate your having us here to talk about it, and thank you for your thoughts and your concern and your compassion for
Yes.
individuals living with mental illness. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for all of you do. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, everyone. All right, so our next item on the agenda, sorry, I'm just taking my screen down. Okay, so this is just going to be a committee guided discussion. So for those of you that were here last month for the meeting and those that weren't, you still got the information. So we had, as you know, we had a presenter that came in to talk about the Treatment Court Expansion Act. In preparation for that meeting, we were not asked to have any support. It was brought to us as informational type of presentation, and so, as you recall, it kind of got a little bit off task toward the end. And we did decide to vote on something. It was held off from last meeting, again, as my email had sent out to you, more so because we knew that we were getting the governor's budget proposal, and the commissioner was coming herself to speak to us this month. The budget requests for the fiscal year of 2027 are due on April 1st from all agencies. That's not really, that's a deadline, but not, the heart of deadline. And yes, we were pushed again a little bit in a corner last time, because we wanted to try to see if we wanted to have some type of support prior to the organization needing to file their information before we had our next full board, which is not until April 9th. So was speaking with the board office and Brad, it was discussed on how we could handle that and how we could move forward with it. Since we did have an actual vote, it had to be discussed and tabled and brought back to this meeting now tonight, with us as just a committee member only, as we spoke to the presenters and we had public comment from last week. So now it just comes to the table for us on the committee to discuss if we want to take any potential action on that treatment court expansion plan, which supported their budget request to have more funding in favor of their act. Or if we would like to remove our previous discussion and vote for actually submitting something from our committee. Therefore, if we were going to take it to the full board, which would then go to our representatives. So we had a few concerns last time. I believe that mainly they were due to not understanding perhaps where they wanted the money allocated. They had forwarded us like some 100-something page PDF that they have, their actual PDF that they're sending in. And I did forward that on to everyone. I don't know if anyone got a chance to look over that for those that had those specific questions. So if I have enough on the call still, and Marissa did tell me, since the emergency is still in effect till the 31st, that I could count those in line as being present and as quorum. So as the moment, we still do have quorum. So I need a table discussion to start about whether or not we would like to continue a letter of support with the vote that we had at last meeting, or we would like to table. Anybody can just go ahead and speak. Yeah, go ahead, Robert.
Do you mind reading back what we voted on? It should be in the minutes now, because I think the discussion was had at that meeting. There were some objections, but I think we took a vote I believe to support it, but I just want to be certain of exactly what the phrasing was.
Sure, I'll put it up. So what I ended up doing after the meeting too, and I sent you guys CB5, or sorry, or CB5, CB3 and CB6's letter of support that was, pretty vague, just that we support the initiative on and providing increased funding that supports those of the Treatment Expansion Act, which provides legal services to those with need from mental health that go into the court system, in which I believe, if I'm correct, they would have to plead guilty in order to then get assistance and whatnot. And it was more for having more services to help individuals that are in that specific need. So I'm going to, well, anybody else wants to talk, I'm going to pull up CB3, CB6's, one sec, letter of support, and then I drafted one. So I'm just going to pull that up. So while I'm doing that, go ahead, whoever wants to talk, because I can't see.
Sorry, I'll interject. I wanted to follow up on an action item that Anne said that she was going to take on, which is to explore the possibility of a community survey on feelings of safety in the district. So I don't know if that belongs in the new business portion. Let me know.
Yeah. It's new business. We put it upon our, in our action now to then bring
Just
as
wanted to
as a subject for us to bring into a meeting to create an actual agenda for that.
Awesome. So let me know when it would be most appropriate to continue the discussion on that.
Okay. Okay. Anybody want to talk about this or have feelings about this one way or the other? It can't just be left. We did vote. It can't just be left, but it has to be decided, re-voted on if we're going forward, or re-voted on if we're tabling it. So again, just give me a minute because it's in your emails, but I want to pull it up so you can look at it while we're talking.
Yeah, I have a few thoughts.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Okay. Yeah, based on the presentation that we heard, it sounded really good to me at the time. And then I spent today reading a lot about these treatment courts. And I think it's not necessarily, they're not necessarily bad, but it's pretty mixed. And so I have, I'm a little bit torn on whether I would support this. I'm happy to hear other people's views. I did really try to get the best understanding I could. I don't know the extent to which the legislation they're proposing is really going to change how exactly what ways they're changing these courts. If there's some huge reforms and ways that they're making them work much better, then potentially I could support that. I think overall there's a lot of issues with this model. I think one issue is that about half of the people that are in a lot of cases that qualify for this diversionary program fail the program. So that means you're going through a drug treatment program for months and months. I guess if it was mental health, it would be different. You go through it for months and months, and then you fail it, and then you have to go to jail anyway. So those people are actually spending more time in jail a lot of the time. There is a lower recidivism rate, but it's not necessarily different studies come to different conclusions on how big that is. So the benefit in diverting people from jail, I think, is less than I had realized. But it's a real complicated thing. And it's possible that this legislation, improves the system in a large way, but I think there's other options that could be better than this. And you really are relying on the criminal justice system to kind of improve itself, which, if there are possibilities to divert people from court altogether, that's often a better option. So I know that's a lot, but I'm just more negative on it than I was before. So that's where I'm at right now.
Tiffany, I have a question. What was the impetus for the agency asking for our support for this? Was it because there were two others, community boards that had already taken an action? You are on mute. You're on mute. You're still on. There you go. There you go.
Okay, sorry about that. Yes, it was. If whoever was on there, if you recall, like, again, it was just more presenting, and I didn't even know about the other, and I even talked to the board office after this. We didn't know that other community boards had been asked to weigh in on them or support them or whatever. And so it was more of, we've had other community boards within your district, I mean, within Manhattan that have supported us. It'd be great if you'd support us too. And then we went to quickly try to look up CB3 and CB6s to see how specific they went with their wording. If they just wanted, because this is something that we do support within our district in general, is homelessness and mental health, and having these services and improving, as we all know, we lack those wraparound services. That's where we are in a lot of ways, that wanted to support any avenue that did support homelessness, mental health, recidivism, all these things. And so it was more just, do you support us in our work to help? And then when I went back on CB3 and CB6s, it is like, as you guys can all see my screen, right? I'm sharing it.
Yes.
So CB6 said, let it be resolved, Manhattan P. Order 6 supports the TCEA's current language requiring that if the defendant initially appears to have a qualifying mental health diagnosis, the court must order an assessment of the defendant's suitability for diversion. So the full record is before the court, even if the judge's earliest sentiment is in that diversion is not appropriate for the defendant, regardless of the result of assessment. So they're saying that they support what they were supporting what they do, and nothing about how much money or how much was in their budget. So that was CB6s, and CB3s was pretty much along that same line. They did go a little bit more in detail, which I didn't mimic my draft over it because that's transportation, sorry. Because theirs was a little more detailed, sorry. It's their whole voting, so I'm trying to find that one. Am I missing anything? I mean, we were kind of like hit at the end with this, and I was too, and I was kind of looked like a flying fish for a minute because I was so caught off guard. Is there something besides that the programs aren't there, that we support the work that they're doing? That's more what CB6 and CB3 said within their letters and what I drafted. But again, Will, I know you sent around what you did earlier today. We didn't have we didn't have somebody come and speak against them. It wasn't argumentative. So if there is concern that this isn't actually even helpful to support an organization, then we would table it, and I would research with the office to see if there's, another side that wants to come before we ever put a stance on it, if it matters for this fiscal year or not. It was more that they wanted the support as they were turning in their proposal for the 2027 fiscal year. And again, we can decide to take no further action.
So would tabling be the same as not taking action?
Yeah. Not taking action unless we decide to bring another component in and then bring it back to an agenda.
So may I speak again, Tiffany?
Sure. I mean, this is all of us.
Okay.
We all need to decide.
Yeah. So I am always suspect of outside entities that come to community boards that are just seeking support for something because they're just trying to paper a record. And I'm not trying to sound crass, but that's a strategy that people employ. I can pick up the phone and talk to Liz Kruger myself. I don't need to take this vote on this particular piece of legislation if, you know, the letter is to the members of the state assembly. You know, I don't think we know enough information, or at least I'll speak for myself. I don't understand this enough. I probably would never be against something that would be helpful to this population. But I'm not certain, as I think Will pointed out earlier, if this is the right remedy or not. And so I would be in favor of making a motion to, you know, but after the discussion is closed, I'm happy to make a motion to table.
Okay. And let me just, one sec, David, let me just read you basically the support that I had written, just so you see the wordage. That CB5 emphasizes the diversion must be implemented in a manner that protects community safety while addressing root causes of criminal legal involvement, consistent with CB5's CB5's fiscal 2027 priorities to strengthen public safety through coordinated services and upstream intervention. And let it be further resolved that this solution be transmitted to the governor, majority leaders of state, and then it was 12-9-3 of a vote. So that's how generic and basic I wrote that, because I kind of felt that's how we were feeling, that we wanted to support the services that to get any help out there, without putting the numbers in there and things like that were the concern. So this is what was written to be, that was voted on, was this resolution right here. Okay, go ahead, David.
Yeah, I'm with Kevin. I don't think that we have the right information on this. I think that we have a third party coming in trying to get our seal of approval to use with the publics that we just don't really have a lot of information about, and they don't really have a track record. So I'm not going to vote for this. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else want to comment? I'm just counting how many people we have, so we all get to count if we're on the call. So 1, 2. Melissa, how many people are in the room?
There's 5.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Just a timing.
Okay, so there's 12. There's 12. Yep, we're fine. Yeah, go ahead. What'd you say?
I missed the last meeting. Is the goal for this to advocate for inclusion in the budget at the state level? So the timing doesn't even line up either. So there's also
the timing did line up. Yeah, the timing did line up, but because we found out there was some concern, like, I mean, it passed, yes, 9-3, but it was kind of like, oh, okay, yeah, it's in our district needs statement to support homelessness, mental health, recidivism, all these things. It's right there in our district needs statement, that we would support it, but it was 9-3-3, and we were just, you know, it wasn't, if we were going to support anything that talked about a number, as far as a budget proposal, I did not want this to be submitted. And like I said, after I talked to Brad and Marisa in the office, we wanted to be able to hear from the commission today while she was actually telling us what was coming from the governor's budget and initiatives and things like that this year before we went any further with this. And again, it would have went to full board on the 9th. I mean, it would just be us taking, you know, having some type of discussion with it, but we took it off of that because if we were going to see anything specifically about a numerical component of a budget, then we needed to hear tonight's agenda with the commissioner and the governor's budget. So that's where that came from. So we have 12 people. I personally, I mean, I'll say mine, I'm okay taking it off. We support them. I think our district needs states that. I don't think we should do things that are super controversial. We should do things that we believe in. So yes, we should support those agencies that do help, but we also need to be mindful about how we support what we are supporting. So we know and we feel good about that we're using the right platform and the right stance. So that's where I stand. So do you guys want to take a vote on who wants that, if we want to just take this off the vote?
I'll make a
Are
motion
you
to
happy to-
table. I'll make a motion to table, please.
Okay. David, you're seconding him?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Andy, turn it off, please. Andy, turn the stove off. Sorry, no, I tell my husband to turn the stove off. Okay. So, okay. Julie, are you still here? I don't think so. Alice? Are you
I
still here?
support tabling.
Okay. Yeah, we're tabling. Yep. Okay, Mike Greeley?
Yes.
Tristan? Is he
Yes.
still there? Thank you, Tris. Lev?
Yes.
Michael Kavak?
Yes.
Andrea? What's that? She's still there?
No, I think she's off.
Oh, she's off. Okay, sorry. You're on?
He's gone.
Yeah, he's going.
Oh, he left. Okay. Me, I'm a yes. Gabby is gone now. Will?
Yes.
Annie is absent. David?
Yes.
Melissa?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yes.
Yoden is absent. And Robert?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So motion passes to table this. If we, I'll work with the office, and if we can get another side that we feel would make us, have a better, line to be able to discuss this and go further with it, then we will. Okay. New business. So this is where, Alice, this is where you'd say, you talk about again. So you wanted to, just repeat yourself if you don't mind, so I can write everything down.
Sure. So firstly, I think we need to follow up with Anne at some point on, she mentioned, and I can watch the recording again, but she mentioned that she was going to take the action item to see if there's plans to do a survey or if they can do a survey. So I think that we should at the very least follow up and see if she plans to do that. My proposal, and I don't know if anyone would want to second this motion, is that the committee considers putting together a resolution with kind of two components to it. One component saying that we would support a survey of the, support doing a survey, whether that is just we would support them doing it or whether we would physically volunteer to support executing on a survey of feeling of public safety, not data on public safety. So like really just talking about the perception of it. And then secondly, being mindful of the budgetary season, is I would also propose saying that there's budget allocated to make people feel safe, not just making the city safe. And we can talk about what measures that would take, what kind of PR campaign that would look like, etc. So I'm curious to hear people's thoughts on drafting something like that up.
And we
So
would, that
one
we wouldn't be
question-
drafting that today. That's would be a discussion, and then we would bring in and I'd talk to the office to kind of coordinate those different entities to come then and speak and present, and then and us also be able to then come up with something along those lines. So this is discussion to discuss, I guess. That's the best way to say it.
I really think that feeling of safety is just as important as a reality of safety to continue. And I think we should very intentionally start to differentiate between those two things.
I don't know. You had me on the survey until talking about putting dollars towards a PR campaign about feeling. I would love to get real data points on how people feel about the safety, and then, try to figure out kind of a plan going forward after that. But like, I think
like a step process, like what, you want.
I think anything right now where we're putting dollars to new things is not great considering what the budget it looks like. And so, yeah, I'm all for a survey. I'm all for, holding them basically to come back to us with actual things that they say they're going to do. That's my 2 cents.
Okay, well, go ahead.
I'm just wondering what already exists in this arena. I think that would be like a first step of, or maybe Alice, like how much data do we have on this stuff already?
Not a ton. It's not high quality, and most of it has never been driven by city entities itself. It's mostly been driven by kind of journalists that are trying to do a pulse check, and so I'm not convinced in the validity of that data. Because I think a lot of, and you've kind of heard from the spiel today, a lot of the work on behalf of the city has historically been focused on changing the reality of the safety situation. And I'm not sure that, we're all very, very deep into the weeds of this, right? Because we live and breathe this, we get, the privilege to hear about these things. The average person walking around and living in the district, they don't follow this. And so this causes this sort of panic effect where they see something on the news or they walk past a homeless person, they're here, an anecdotal piece of evidence. And so from that perspective, I don't know to what extent the city has ever thought about, because they very much so like us live and breathe this. And so to them, it's self-evident that the numbers are going down. I don't think it ever has occurred to them to do an in-depth study of feelings in the district. And I think it's very much so in our purview as the community board to raise that and say, like, you can make meaningful impact very rapidly as a city, but to what extent are the residents actually understanding what's happening and like feeling the impacts of it?
Kevin?
Thank you. Alice, I totally love the idea, and I think I'm in the same place as David. I just want to be clear. I would really support it if we were talking about residents only. I'm not really supportive of the survey for the sake of talking about business owners. I'm not really in support of it for the sake of talking about New Yorkers writ large that come to Midtown. I am interested in knowing what residents in Midtown, there are 100,000 of us, how they feel. That would be my suggestion.
Kevin, would you be amenable to maybe like distinguishing between the populations as the survey is executing? So for example, rather than lumping all of the data together and saying that like it's all a hodgepodge, we're just going to take the average, would you be amenable to some sort of language or prioritization saying we primarily care about the residents, but if you collect any other data, you must differentiate between, let's say, the feelings of the resident population versus the business owner population versus the tourist population?
Yeah, I think that'd be fine. I would just also ask if it could be a scientific representative sample. I mean, not interested in a social media push poll, which doesn't really tell us much of anything. If the city or the state are going to spend money to do such a survey, then it needs to be scientific.
Okay. Any other feedback on? Okay, so Alice, I'm gonna talk to Marisa in the office and see what they know has been out there just for like a starting point, and then we'll work with them to get something going, and then move forward. Okay.
Sounds great.
Okay.
Looking forward to supporting.
Thank you. And sorry, real quick, I did just surpass the subcommittee stuff. Was there anything to report from the police precincts or the shelter stuff? Don't want me to say stuff. Apologize. Will, go ahead, please.
Yeah, so I did a meeting with the Redbury Hotel, which is a shelter. It was a Zoom meeting. I don't know, it was probably like a month ago or more. It was mostly, there were a couple guys who were like, kind of business type professional guys that lived in the neighborhood and were really upset that there were individuals hanging out outside. They thought maybe they were dealing drugs or just causing a menace. I'm not exactly sure, but that was what dominated like the whole conversation. I tried to get a little more info on how work at the shelter is going and the people that live there, but I didn't get a lot. But I think it hit home for me once again that this is just like a huge issue. It's the same thing when I went to the precinct. It's it is about, to Alice's point, people feeling unsafe and whether or not there's actual illegal behavior going on, and then wanting like the cops to come in and do something, or and I get that. I understand that feeling of not feeling safe, but it's the issue of unsheltered homeless folks, and not that everyone in front of the hotel is homeless, but it is a shelter, and it makes people feel unsafe, and it creates a feeling of sort of chaos and disorder. And so just hit home for me again that that's just like a really central issue that our district is dealing with and needs to focus on. And we have another meeting next week, so I will learn more
Okay.
then.
Okay, sounds good. And I did talk to so you know too, so I did talk to Marisa about this, and it appears, so I guess she was able to get some resident statements, and she turned those into the Department of Social Services, and they're having a closed meeting with Harvey Epstein's office, to discuss, residents' concerns too, based on things that aren't going as promised and components within the shelter itself. So yeah, we know they're not, I'm glad we finally got a meeting. Shelters is one of our parts of our committee overall, and we haven't been able to be very active in any of that, let alone knowledge. So I'm glad that you had that. I think with that next meeting, Will, that I believe that meeting is like this coming week, that they're having that closed meeting. And so
Tuesday.
yeah, okay, yeah, it's during exec. And so Marisa's gonna get the feedback or whatnot, and
No, she's not gonna go because of exec, so
yeah,
I'm
because
gonna,
of that. Okay.
I'm gonna attend.
Oh, they're gonna let you go. Okay, yeah, that's great. I wasn't sure. When I talked to her last, we weren't sure. So
Well,
okay.
she sent me the link, so hopefully they let me join. I don't know.
That probably made you worse, so that's great. Okay, thank you again. So we'll talk more about that for the next agenda. Anything else from any other committees, any other wants that you want us to start focusing on besides what we just discussed with Alice and public safety and then the shelters? That's kind of what's coming up next. All right. All right.
Did you say something about new business before?
And then let me go back to new business. Yes, thank you. New business. Let's end it. What do you got?
I have a tour tomorrow, actually, at 10:30. We meet at the Yellow Button, Garment District Tour. It's free. And certainly all are welcome. Got about 7 people registered, and love to have anybody from the community board who wants to see some of the things that I talk about. When I talk about what I've seen in the Garment District, you can join me and see it for yourself. You're all welcome to join.
Thank
Anybody
you.
want information, look at my website or ask now, and I will be glad to tell you.
Thank you. I need to do your Flatiron one when I'm back around. All right. Thank you guys. This was, I try not to make it go past 8. I don't like that anyways, but we got right to 8 o'clock, but it was a great meeting. We had fabulous people come join us tonight, and you're all great too. So thank you, everyone. Have a great night, and I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Good night.